son poco más donde dice Manu. Para que te veas que estás ahí. Okay, bye. Thank you, Mom. El audio, no sé si nadie está por ahí, pues sí o no. The stick is not working. Le chequé la conexión y se ve bien. Apesco. Ahí está el audio.
No, yo le iba a preguntar algo.
Oh, why you going down? Bate.
¿Puede ser del iPad también, Rosy?
Yes, it's good.
¿Por qué mejor no hacemos del iPad?
Mira los que tocaron.
Apágalo de ver. Que mi celular.
All right, we'll start in about like 1 or 2 minutes. Just let some last people join.
No.
It's Mike.
John is there.
They got crash? Crash? What happened?
All right, so we can get started here today. First of all, thank you guys for joining the meeting today. We're going to be discussing a little bit about the mental side of the game. Just a little background on myself. So I went to college up in Trinity College, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. I played on the soccer team there, and I also had a major in psychology. So a lot of projects and presentations I did at school was about what I'm going to present today, like the mental side of the game and how how the mental side can impact your performance. So we'll get started today. The plan for today is I have like a little PowerPoint. It's pretty short. It's about like 6, 7 slides. So I'm thinking it'll take about like 35-ish minutes to get through. Hopefully you guys can learn something from it. And then I want to give you guys enough time at the end to ask questions. And what we'll do with the questions is, because we have a lot of people in here, so we don't have everyone just kind of blurting out questions, I'll have you guys type it in the chat. And then me and Mike will do our best to answer all the questions. So I'm going to share my screen here for the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
All right, so I think everyone should be able to see that. So like I was just discussing, today we're going to talk about the mental side of the game. And a phrase that I like to say, or motto, is play free, play fearless. And the presentation that I'm about to do will hopefully get you to that place where you can play free and play fearless.
Play free, play fearless. You heard that expression?
All right. So the 3 pillars to any sport really There's three. There's the mental, the technical, and the physical. The mental is what we're going to be discussing today. The technical is the skills that come along with any sport. So specifically in soccer, trapping the ball, passing, shooting, all those things. And then pillar three, the physical part, that's your fitness levels, your body muscle, and yeah, your fitness levels, body muscle. So when you first start playing out in any sport, the three pillars pretty much look equal. Everyone's just learning how to trap, pass. Everyone's kind of muscle structure is the same. So when you just start beginning to play sports, these are what the three pillars look like, all equal. However, once you start to grow and players start to learn how to trap, how to
I
pass,
told you to get on this call for a second.
become more familiar with the game, the three pillars start to look like this. The mental becomes a very important part of the game, and honestly, it's under addressed really. I mean, when I was growing up, as well as Coach Mike, we're also going to talk about a little bit of our personal experience with how we struggled in certain spots with our like mental toughness as we were growing up. And it's really under addressed, I feel like. And that's why today I think it's very important that we're discussing it. And especially a lot of the you guys in here are pretty young. So I think it's good to be addressing this at a young age. So the technical and the physical, although they're very important to the sport, when you get to the high school, the college, and the professional level, like everyone can pass the ball, everyone can trap, everyone can shoot well. So it's just the mental is what determines between a good player and a great player, between those who make it and really those who don't make it. All right, so on this next slide here, I'm going to discuss common factors that impact our performance. And these are just the first 5 that I can think of. There might be a lot others, but kind of reflecting on my own experience and, you know, seeing other athletes as well. These are the top 5 in my perspective. So number 1, which is huge, fear of making a mistake or fear of failure. And this comes a lot of times from a lack of confidence. And so before you get into a game, everyone's going to have like the what if statements like, oh, what if I make a mistake? What if I let my team down? These statements are normal, but it's how you deal with those statements that can affect our performance. So if you go into a game and you're already thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm so nervous. Like if I make a mistake, like my teammates like are going to think I'm bad. My coach is going to think I'm bad. That's automatically setting you up for failure. And you're already going into the game with a lack of confidence. Like you're not focusing on the skills that you have and like the reason why you're on the team that you're on. Just before I continue, so I want everyone to hear, if you guys can just mute your mics, I think it'll be better for everyone to hear. But continuing from there, number 2, we have reaction to making a mistake. So it's one thing to make a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, which I'm going to get to a little bit later. But the second thing is how you react to that mistake. A lot of players, professional players, they make a lot of mistakes during the game, but it's how they react to that game, to how they react to that mistakes that impacts their performance later in the game. So for example, you can get frustrated, you can get nervous. I know for myself, I'm going to talk a little about this later, but every time I would make a mistake when I was younger, like I would stop asking for the ball and I didn't want the ball because I didn't want to make another mistake. I kind of felt like embarrassed. I thought my coach was going to like take me out of the game or wasn't going to think I was good. So every time I made a mistake, I was kind of like invisible on the field, which is what you don't want to happen. After you make a mistake, you're like, okay, I made the mistake, but now I got to move on, especially in soccer because there's very little breaks. There's no timeouts. Maybe the ball goes out of bounds for like 5 seconds, but then it's right back into play. So you got to snap back out of it and get right back into the play. Number 3, am I good enough? So these are thoughts of self-doubt. I know a big one for me, which is why I included it here, is a couple of games, especially in college, like I would start on the bench and automatically before the game even started, when I knew that I was on the bench, I thought like I wasn't going to have a good game because the coach didn't think I was good enough to start. I would always be worrying about like, oh, why am I on the bench? Like, why am I not getting subbed in yet? You know, it's already like the 40th minute and I'm not subbed in. Like, am I going to play? And so I had all these thoughts going through my head before I even stepped onto the field. so that when I eventually did step on the field, I had no confidence and I was doubting myself. I was like, should I even be on the field? There's other players that are maybe better than me. And so moving to number 4, which is also a big one, fear of coaches' thoughts and also parents. So a big one is fear of coaches' thoughts. We'll start with that one. You're gonna have different coaches in your careers that some are gonna be good coaches, some are gonna be bad coaches. For me, when I was younger, I had I would say the majority of good coaches. A lot of them believed in me and they saw like the talent that I had. For me personally, which I said I'll go into a little bit later when I explain my kind of personal journey. They believed in me, but I kind of lacked the confidence. So that was the discrepancy with me. But one coach that I had in college who was the worst coach that I ever had, um, he had this process of that every time he made a mistake, like he would sub you off the field, which is like the worst thing a coach can do. The last thing you want to do as a coach is tell a player, if you make a mistake, I'm taking you off the field. Because then the whole game, which was what I was doing, you're just worrying about making a mistake. You know, if you make a mistake that you're going to come on the bench. So like it's at that point, it's like almost impossible to be kind of play your own game without worrying about making a bad pass or not making the right run or any mistake really, and you're going to get taken out of the game. So that's the first part. The second part, which is also big, is fear of kind of your parents' opinions and disappointing people. So I know for me, a lot of times I started playing soccer. I think all of us here started playing soccer because we love the game, we enjoy it. But there was one part in my soccer career where I felt like I wasn't really playing for myself. I was playing for other people. I was playing for my coach. I was playing for my parents. And every time I had a bad game, it wasn't like I was more upset because I disappointed other people. So I think one big thing that I'm going to talk about on the next slide is how we can really get over that and play soccer for the enjoyment of it and because we love the game. You should be stepping on the field like excited to play with your team, excited to score, just excited to play the game. And then also looking at the parent section, today is kind of just really an introduction, like I'm doing it briefly on like factors that impact our performance. But if you guys like this and we can continue this, what I'm planning on doing later is like a bi-weekly kind of meeting process. So I'll have a topic. So for example, I'll have a meeting on like dealing with pressure, getting recruited to college, which would be like mostly high school kids. And then I also want to do a meeting on like kind of parents' expectations and really how to like coach your kids growing up. Because I feel like for me, and I know Coach Mike can speak to this, I don't know if you want to chime in, but like how our parents interact with us while we're playing is like a crucial part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll talk about it later, but my dad had a really, really big impact, both negatively and positively, on my playing career when I was growing up. So I think parents need to understand like the effect they have on the kids as well. And we'll talk about it later, but I just want to briefly touch on that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna kind of designate like 5 to 10 minutes where I'll talk first about my experience and then Coach Mike will talk about his experience. But looking at number 5, concern about winning and losing. So one thing that Coach Mike and I noticed, like obviously when you guys come and train with us, we like to make competitions, we like to make it super competitive, because you need to have that attitude when you're playing. Like you should always want to win, you should always give your best effort. But in the end, like if you give your best effort and you lose, it shouldn't be something that upsets you to the point where you're leaving crying, your whole day is ruined after that, or like you don't want to play soccer anymore. When you learn, it's more of like a learning, when you lose, it's more of like a learning process. So, you need to have the mentality of like, okay, I gave my everything. I didn't win in the end, but this is just things to learn. So the next time I can compete and maybe the mistake that I made, because that made me not win, next time can make me win. So we'll move to our next slide here. So how to deal with these thoughts. All right. The first one, which is what me and Coach Mike try to tell you guys all the time. recognize that everyone makes mistakes, all right? Mistakes aren't necessarily a bad thing. I've made hundreds, thousands of mistakes. Your favorite players make hundreds of thousands of mistakes every game. I mean, my favorite player is Messi. I'm sure a lot of you guys too. And he loses the ball like hundreds of times a game, maybe, but no one really like remembers the times he lost the ball. Everyone remembers like the runs that he had, the goals he scores, the passes he creates. So no one really remembers the mistakes that you made. It's more how you bounce back from those mistakes and create the opportunities that people will remember. So I included a little clip in here from Kevin De Bruyne. He's a player on Man City. I'm sure a lot of you guys know him, but he kind of talks about how he views mistakes. So give me few seconds to get this video up.
And I want to touch on what Coach Alex just said about like Messi losing the ball. Like if Messi was like a lot of people and he lost the ball, what would he end up doing? Like he doesn't sulk about it. He doesn't like get down on himself. He just gets the ball and goes again and goes again and goes again. And that's what we're trying to get you guys to understand too. Is like you have to keep going. It doesn't matter if you make one mistake, two mistakes. You could lose the ball 30 times, but you score one goal. Nobody remembers the 30 mistakes you made. They remember the one goal you scored.
Yeah, exactly. And then in this video, Kevin De Bruyne is just talking about like his thought process on making mistakes.
Of making mistakes.
It's De Bruyne again in top right side the bottom corner.
I think a lot of times when people make mistakes, they don't do it anymore. Like when I do a mistake, I try to do it twice more. And if I make it twice more, I'll do it again. You know, it's I think in one kind of way learning where you go wrong. And I think you understand more out of it if you make errors.
All right. So the most important thing for me that he said there is
Right here.
that every time you
Uh,
make a
You
mistake,
probably already know it. At some point you were on my website.
every time you make a mistake, it's like a learning process. So when he makes a mistake, he doesn't forget about that mistake. He more he learned, he looks at it, what he did wrong, and then eventually from there, the next time he has a shot on goal, like he knows to put him in the bottom corner or to lock his ankle or whatever he didn't do right the first time. So let me get back to the PowerPoint here. All right, so number two, which is what I touched upon a little bit earlier, playing soccer is fun and everyone should be enjoying the game. You know, a lot of times, even when you're young, there's a lot of pressure that go into the game. You don't want to disappoint your coach, disappoint your family, your parents. So when you step on the field, you kind of lose the enjoyment of it. And that's what happened with myself as well. It got a little bit better in college, but when I was trying to get recruited to college, like my whole mindset was just about getting recruited. Like I wanted to go to the best possible school that I can. So I kind of stopped enjoying the game for a while. Like I was like, do I really want to play? Like, am I the one that wants to play? Or am I just doing this because like I want to like make my dad proud that I got to play in college or make my coach proud because he believes in me. So I feel like, and then as you get older, like I said, the recruiting process for college, and then if you play pro, like the pressure, it does get a little bit more. But I think that's it's important why we're addressing this early, because no matter what, if you're playing in a World Cup final, like you should be enjoying the game. Like yes, it's a lot of pressure. It's the world's biggest stage, but you just got to go in there and enjoy it. And the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about that, how you can get to that point. The third one, realize that you're on a team because you deserve that spot. So you have to believe in your abilities. All right. A big thing, like I said earlier with me, is coaches believed in me, but I didn't believe in myself. You know, I had many coaches tell me like, oh, you have the ability to play at a Division I school, to go pro. And I think for me, it was like they saw that in me, but I didn't really see it in myself. Like I saw other players and They were like a little bit faster than me, so I started to doubt my abilities. I was very good technically, but my fitness as like sprinting wise, like I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the biggest. So I started to like doubt myself in every game. Like I would lose 50-50 tackles because I was hesitant. Um, but throughout that whole process, like I was never certain that like I had a spot on the team. I always thought I had my doubts, and that's kind of why like maybe I wasn't starting as many games as I should have. And then the last one, which we touched upon in the last slide, is losing is not the end of the world. Instead, it's a moment to learn. Um, so, when you come to train with me and Coach Mike, and then like we said earlier, like sometimes when we see like kids lose, they'll get upset, they'll cry, they'll stop wanting to play, they'll go sit on the chair outside. We push you guys not because like we want to embarrass you or like make you sad that you lose, but more of that we want to push yourself so you give your everything so that you can win. But if you don't win, you still gave your best. And it should push this. Obviously, I'm not saying that like you shouldn't be upset if you lose. Um, Losing, it's not a good feeling, but I think it's a feeling that we all have to go through in order to get to that winning feeling. I know a lot of quotes go around the point of like have to feel the feeling of losing to have like the great feeling of winning. So I think that's a crucial part because all the greats in the world, they've lost World Cup games, they lost championships, they've missed penalties. But then when they won that game, when they won maybe a Champions League final, like it just felt even better because they realized that they got over that hump of that loss and they put it in the past, and now they're able to get to that achievement that they weren't able to in the past. All right, so the next slide here is ways to get to these conclusions. Because I feel like even with myself, like everyone would say like, oh, like, like just get over the mistake, like don't worry about it, like just move on. And then for me, it was like, okay, like I'll move on, but I didn't know how to move on. Like all these thoughts would come back, and I was like, it basically sounded easier. It is a lot easier to say than to do. And what I want to do here is kind of, like I said before, I'm going to briefly touch upon these. And then maybe in our next meetings that we have, like the bi-weekly ones, I definitely want to go into these a little bit more and share kind of how I integrated this into my process, like before games, during games, after games. So the first one was focusing on the present moment. So when you're in a game, it's easy to think about like, oh, are we going to win this game? Like, or you can think about in the past, like, oh, like I made a mistake last game. Like, what if I make that same mistake? Like, coach yelled at me last game because I didn't make this run. Like, what happens if I don't make this run again? So a lot of thoughts go into our head while we're playing, but the most important thing is to focus on the present moment. You need to focus on making a good touch, making a good pass. That you shouldn't really have thoughts about. But like I said, the thoughts are natural if they come up. Like, oh, like what if I make a mistake? If those thoughts come up, um, it's just about like accepting that they're there and then moving on and like just being in the present moment of the game. And that also goes along with enjoying the game. If you're focusing on the present, then you're gonna have a lot more fun playing with your teammates, dribbling, shooting. The second one is conscious breathing. So when I was going through like my struggles of my mentality, like before games, I started seeing a sports psychologist, which is why I actually majored in sports psychology. I was really interested in that. And one exercise that I kind of worked on was conscious breathing, which can be done before, during, and then after the game as well. But during the game, what I thought was really interesting, one thing I learned was that so in moments of like high stress and moments that you're having a lot of these what if statements, like what if I make a mistake, I would kind of take a second, maybe the ball goes out of play, and it would just be like kind of slow breaths, like in through my nose, out through my mouth, which would kind of calm me down in the moment. So if I had the thoughts about like mistakes in the past or concerned about making a mistake in the future, that would kind of center me back to the present moment, just those like 2 or 3 breaths before the ball came back into play. Number 3, which I also used, was visualization. And I remember reading one story that I really liked about Pele, which a lot before you guys' times, but maybe you guys have heard of him. before every game, he used to go into the locker room and he would put a towel over his head and he would just lie down and he would visualize like what he wanted the game to look like. So he would visualize himself making a good pass. He would visualize himself scoring a great goal, celebrating with his teammates. And then he said countless times that what he would visualize in the game would come true because he felt the passion that he had in the game of scoring a goal. And I'll talk about that a little bit more on number 6 with self-talk and kind of believing in yourself in that instance. So I'll save what I was going to say for number 6. But number 4, I put a star next to this one because I feel like it's pretty important. So not ignoring negative thoughts and emotions. So when I say negative thoughts, like what if statements about like making mistakes, but realizing they're there and moving on. So when I went to see the sports psychologist, the main thing that he told me was these thoughts aren't going to go away. Everyone has these thoughts. You know, everyone thinks about making mistakes. It would be pretty much impossible to not have these thoughts, but it's how we react to these thoughts that kind of differentiate the impact that it has on our performance. So I included a video on here that I'm going to play at the end of this slide. It's Novak Djokovic, who's like a very good tennis player, and he was big on like the mental side of the game as well. So I'll show it at the end of the slide, but he talks about how when these thoughts came up, he didn't ignore them. Like he acknowledged that they were there, but he didn't let them dwell in his mind. So like it could be like a big point in the match, maybe like match point that he needed to save. And he was like got nervous in the moment, but then he recognized like his nerves were there, and then he felt he maybe used some conscious breathing and was back in the present moment and focused on the point at hand. Number 5, mindfulness and meditation. So I also did this a bit. I would usually do this before games, maybe like 2 or 3 hours before, just to calm my nerves. I would like sit down in a chair. There's a whole process to it, which I can go into like in later videos, but I was able to like meditate and calm my nerves before the game. Lastly, self-talk, which is huge. So during the game, like not even during the game, but at all points, like you should be telling yourself that you're a very good player, like you're working hard, you have the ability to go anywhere you want. It's just the work that you put in. Which takes me to the quotation, the parentheses here, thoughts versus emotions. So you want your thoughts to be congruent with how you feel and your emotions. So to be more specific, so if you say like, oh yeah, like I'm putting in the hard work, like I'm a great player, but then you don't really feel that, or you're not putting in the hard work, it's not gonna you're not gonna see a result. Or the same thing like before the game, like, oh, like if you say like I'm gonna score this game, but you don't really feel like you're gonna score, it's probably not gonna happen. I remember specifically Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which is he was retired now, but he was like a striker. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of him. He came to the MLS like a couple years ago, and before his first game, like he told like every news outlet and all social media, he was like, I'm gonna score in my first game. And everyone was like, oh, like he's just saying that because he thinks he's like a big player. Like it's pretty doubtful that he's gonna score. Like he might not even play. They might sub him in like the 80th minute because it's his first game. And then he did get subbed in pretty late in the game. I think it was like the 60th minute, and he ended up scoring like 2 goals right away. And like that kind of stemmed from like his confidence before going into the game. He told himself like, yeah, like I'm a great player. Like I know I'm gonna score. And a lot of people see that as arrogance or like cocky, but I think there's a fine line between those two. You need to have a little bit of arrogance, honestly, before going into a game. You don't need to show it, but you need internally, like you need to understand that you're a great player. You're put in these situations because like you worked hard and you put in the work. So you need to keep reminding yourself, like, I'm a great player, I'm here, I can score, like I can make a difference on my team. So now I'll show a little bit about the Djokovic. So because you guys have heard me talking a lot, so maybe you hear from like an athlete who's kind of gone through it. So let me bring up this video quick.
well, for me, when you're in those situations, how do you avoid distraction? Consciously breathing first. That's probably the simplest thing that you could do, but probably the most effective. I think the experience of being in this particular situation so many times before in my career helps me every next time that I have faced the adversity and faced the distractions and, you know, my thoughts and what ifs and fears and so forth. I think everyone goes through that thought process. It's just, and I don't think it's particularly bad. I was thinking it's bad, so I was trying to ignore it, or I was trying to shut it down. But I think the major transformation in a positive way for me started when I was starting to acknowledge it and accepted it as part of me. It's there. My ego is there. My fears are there. Everything is there. It's present, but then how will I address it in a way that is going to help me to overcome that, to transform it into positive fuel that is going to help me overcome the clutch moments that you talked about, just feel happy and joyful and present on the court and get the best out of that experience. How do you do it? Well, I practice a lot of mindfulness. So, you know, meditation, you know, journaling, talking with my team, with my parents, with my wife, with everybody who is around me, trying to address certain, with my, of course, life coaches that I have, spiritual guides that I have as well that help me address certain emotional, you know, issues or traumas or whatever it is that tend to appear on the court. So when it appears on a break point, when I'm facing a match point or break point or, you know, clutch moments, they do tend to surface, but I managed to gain the control over them much quicker, and I managed to impose my positive affirmation and positive feeling. Or if that doesn't happen, then I just try to be conscious that I have to accept that moment, that that's going to happen, but I focus on my breathing and I focus on being in the moment and what needs to be done next moment, which is playing the right shot, positioning myself well on the court, and just focusing on executing the point right. It just takes.
All right, so we'll stop it there, but that kind of just summarizes a little bit what I was explaining before, how we're all going to have these thoughts on the field, like these thoughts of making mistakes, but it's how we address those thoughts and then eventually move on from them. We don't want to dwell on them and kind of impact our performance and stay in our mind for the whole game. So that was a brief introduction. I know I've been talking for the last 30 minutes, but for now, I talked a little bit about my experience, but maybe I'll talk about a little bit more, and then I'll have Coach Mike kind of talk about his experience and how he dealt with like the mental side of the game. So for me, like I was saying before, a lot of coaches told me like that I had the potential to go pro, had the potential to play at a good school, but I didn't really like believe in it myself. I was very timid on the field. Like I was fearful of making mistakes. I was fearful of my teammates thinking that I wasn't a good player. So eventually, when I started seeing the sports psychologist, we went over kind of practices and ways, for example, like the conscious breathing, the mindfulness meditation. It kind of helped me realize, well, first it helped me realize that like the reason why I started playing soccer, I kind of found that enjoyment again. And my freshman season in college, I actually was the top scorer on my team. And I started like the first 8 games, had the most goals, was playing like 90 minutes a game. So it was going really well. And then my sophomore season in college, COVID hit, so I kind of lost the season after that. And then my junior season, I had the same coach that I did my freshman year, but he kind of, I don't, to be honest, I don't really know what happened. He kind of looked at me differently. We had a couple kids come in that were decent, and I think he kind of viewed them as having more an impact than myself, which is, like I said, it's going to happen. You're going to have coaches who maybe um, think other players are better than you or can make an impact on you. And that when I realized that, instead of pushing hard and working harder to gain that spot back, I kind of started blaming my coach. I was like, oh, like he just thinks they're better than me. Like I'm never gonna have a shot at starting. Like I'm not gonna play that much, which is not the right attitude to have. You should go in and say like, okay, if my coach thinks that these players are better than me, then I'm gonna go in and beat them in a 50-50 tackle, or I'm gonna beat them in a one-on-one and score. And as I kind of went through the process, I tried to go back to those thoughts, but like I said, it's pretty difficult, especially when you're in the middle of the season, and especially in college, the season's really short. So I wanted to get in as soon as I could, but that was just something that I struggled with mentally. But definitely going to see a sports psychologist helped. It helped me realize the things that I was telling you today, focusing on the present moment and kind of practices that helped me get over those humps. But I'll hand it over to Coach Mike now. He can talk a little bit about his experience with it.
Hey everybody, just want to thank you guys for joining us. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about mine. So when I was younger, my dad had a really big impact on my playing career, both positively and negatively. So when I was younger, my dad was the type that would be yelling all game at me and sitting by himself, and everyone heard him all game. And it was good up until a certain age because it kept pushing me. It kept pushing me, and I always felt like I had to play well for him. But then it got to a point where he didn't tell me anything I did good anymore. And so I started to get really negative myself, and I kept training really, really hard, but I felt like I disappointed him all the time. And that's what my training started to become. So I think like parents need to realize the impact they can have on the kids too. I think, yeah, you need to tell them what they're doing wrong, but you also need to let them reinforce what they're doing well. So I coach one girl U17 girls team. And when the girls do something like they're supposed to do, I reinforce it like, yes, you have to keep doing that. That's good. That's good. And I think that's something as parents, you guys can do to probably to help the kids grow because they need to hear it. They don't know. They're so young. My dad used to always say, you know what you do well. I don't. I was super young. I had no idea. Even to this day, sometimes, yeah, I know what to do well, but sometimes an outsider has a better view of the game than I do when I'm in it because there's so many factors going on. I'm not focused on every little thing. So I think as parents, you need to pick out the right things that they do and let them know. They need to have positive reinforcement. And yes, you can tell them what they did wrong. Like I always like to ask questions like, hey, you made that pass there, but what do you think a better pass is? Like make them think. Don't give them the answers because you're not going to be on the field passing the ball for them. They've got to make the decisions for themselves. So they need to be able to come up with the answers themselves on the field. You're not there to hold their hand their whole lives. But my dad, so I played rec soccer until I was in 8th grade, and I was able to luckily make it to the MLS. My first club team I played on was in 8th grade. Well, I was playing ASO before that. The reason I was able to get far is because I trained so much. I trained so hard all the time, and I trained more than everybody else. But the moment my dad stopped coming to my games was the moment I started to excel more as a player and stand out because I didn't feel the pressure of him being there anymore. So I just want to say to the parents, like, I don't want your kids to feel pressure because you're there. They should be playing the game because it's fun. So when I started to feel like I was having fun and I had no pressure on me, I was able to go much, much farther and get seen and play Division I soccer and play in the USL, play in the MLS. I was able to go and play in Europe, but that was only because I stopped feeling the pressure my dad was putting on me. So I think that's like a big thing parents need to understand is like the effect you can have on your kids, both positively and negatively, like I said. But then after I got over that, I went to college, knew I didn't want to be there, and then I started going to try out for professional teams. But I'm 18, 19 years old and I'm trying to make spots over guys that are 26, 27 that have a family, and this is how they make their living. And I didn't have the confidence. I didn't play at the biggest D1 school, so it wasn't easy for me. But the big thing I would say for me is I trained so much. I trained more than any of these guys by far. I was training 3 times a day. And I also, this is they say it a lot, but it's really true. I faked it. I faked my confidence. I maybe didn't have the most confidence in the world, but I faked the confidence. So when I went to tryouts, I like pretended I played somewhere bigger, so that like I felt that it's weird to say. I can't really explain it, but like I just faked the confidence. I was a mid-level to low-level D1 college soccer player trying to make these professional teams going all over the country. And it's hard to make these spots over guys that have been doing this for the last 8-10 years professionally. So when I walked into these tryouts or into preseasons, I had to like fake my confidence a little bit. And I can't even tell you how many no's, but the thing about me is I just didn't give up. I just didn't give up. I kept going. I went to DC United. I went to Harrisburg. I went to Minnesota. I forget all the teams, countless teams. I got no. You're good, but you're too young. You're inexperienced. But I just didn't give up. I kept training. I dropped out of college. So at that point, I was like, what am I going to do? But I just kept training every single day. And then I went to a random tryout at Westchester Flames PDL. And this is, I think, another thing too about kids is they need to be flexible. Like just need to be a good soccer player. Growing up and in college, I was a center attacking mid forward. I went to the Westchester Flames tryout and I saw that the guys, and this is PDL, so this is like U23 college kids. I saw who was on the team. I saw the guys that weren't on the team, and I saw that people on the team needed a right back. I never played right back in my life before, but I thought to myself, maybe I'll have a better chance of making this team if I go play right back. And just because I was an overall good soccer player and athletically good, you can just step in and play a different position. You don't have to just be labeled as a center back or a forward. Like you have to be fluid to be able to play more positions. So I think for me, I was able to step in that position in the tryout, and 20 minutes into the scrimmage, my first agent is standing there on the sideline and it starts talking to me. And he's like, I like you. Like, where are you from? Where have you played? Ended up bringing me to Portugal 2 months later, and I signed my first professional contract. So I would say like 6 months before that, I was a striker, a center attacking mid, playing Division I soccer. 6 months later, I'm playing right back in Portugal. I think that's one other thing too, is what we try to teach the kids, at least when they come to us. I don't really want to do position specific stuff so much, because you don't know if that's going to be your position forever. And I want you to be able to step into other positions and be able to play. You need to be able to play multiple positions so you have better chances on the field. Even playing professionally, I had more opportunities than most because I could use both feet and I could play multiple positions. So I was a right back in Portugal for 2 years. Then I came back to the US, and I was going back to a bunch of tryouts, and I was able to get on New York Red Bulls. But I made that team as a center back. Then the rest of my career was a center back, sometimes outside back. But then even when I went to the MLS, I played a lot because I could play right back, I could play right center back, I could play left center back, I could play left back. I was just a utility. Like I could do all of it, and I could use both feet. I could cross, I could pass. And I think that's the thing, is that all the kids need to have all the abilities. And that's what we try to work on. I try to teach them the dribbling, foot skills, the correct type of touch, the correct weight of pass. Like everything we work on with them is like everything that I've had to do my whole life. And the big thing for me the reason I was able to get so far, and I'm sure I could have gone farther, but there's just other factors I couldn't control. But the big thing for me is I just trained harder than everybody else. I was at the field all the time. Even when I was playing professionally, I would go to the field at 6 a.m. I had a group of guys that would come train with me, and we'd be there from 6 to 8 a.m. I'd come home, I'd go to the gym, I'd go train again in the afternoon, and I play at night. And this is just in the off season. Like I just wanted it more. And it's hard because I don't know the level all the kids are at. But I don't want to train them like they're like 8, 9, 10, whatever they are. Even if they're 16, 17, 18 years old, I don't want to train you like that. I try to train you like you're 18, 19, 20 years old trying to play professionally, because I want you to have that taste of that. Because even if you don't want to get there, you can still play a higher level, and you're going to have like that understanding of what it takes to get to that level. Because I know all the kids don't want to get there. And we also train each kid individually. I know kind of some kids are just having fun and they just want to be better on their club team. Some kids do want to play in college. Some kids do want to play professionally. And I tailor, and myself and Coach Alex tailor how we coach the kids to each kid's individual, I would say, goals or aspirations. I know the kids I can get harder on. I know the kids that I need to be a little softer on, but I think the big thing for me is the kids need to be training on their own. That's why we do everything individually. You rarely see me or Coach Alex passing the kids the ball because I'm not going to be there. The parents aren't going to be there to help them all the time. It's got to be on them. And it's not coming from us. It's not coming from me to help the kids. It's not coming from the parents to help the kids. It's got to be the kids going outside and wanting it themselves. If it was my dad wanting this for me, or my teachers or my brothers and sisters, it never would happen. It was because I would go outside in the snow, in the rain, taking the train anywhere I had to go to figure out how I was going to play somewhere. So I think that's the big thing is the kids need to like want to go to the next level. If you're a parent, you're pushing your kid to play, it's probably not for them. So I think, but also I think encouraging them, like as a parent, like maybe they're still young and you need to encourage them, like, hey, maybe you should go work on what Coach Mike and Coach Alex were working on with you this week for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then it starts to become, and you can start to make little challenges. But I think it comes down to like the kids needing it. And I think speaking about the mental aspect of the game too, and Coach Alex was talking about it before, is playing in front of a lot of people and disappointing people. I played in front of 50, 60,000 people. When we played, I was on the Colorado Rapids. When I played in front of Atlanta United, there was 55, 60,000 people. At the end of the game, I didn't have a voice because I couldn't talk anymore because I was yelling all game. You forget about that stuff when you get in those situations. And even if there's 10 people on the sideline, you're not focused on them when you're in the game. So I think the big thing for the kids is to focus on what's happening in the game. I'm not focusing on who's out there and who's watching me. And the moment you get into the zone, like I didn't realize in those games, there was 40, 50, 60,000 people at the game. I didn't focus on them. I didn't even realize they were there anymore. I'm just in the zone. It's me, and I played this game my whole life, and I'm playing guys that play with the same rules I do. And I think you just got to be able to realize that no one has any different rules than you. We all have the same amount of time. We all got to be training to be able to get to those next levels. But yeah, I think for me, I would say that I think there's more we can touch on about this. I don't want to start going on like different tangents and stuff, but I think there's like parts where we can talk to the parents about how they can have more of a positive effect on the kids. I think there's more we talk to about the kids and their goals and how far they can go in the game. But I think that's just a little bit about my feeling on the mental side. But I would say, and I tell the kids all the time, I think 90% of the game is the mental. At that next level, like as Coach Alex said, everyone can pass, everyone can dribble, everyone can shoot. It's how can you deal with what's going on, even if you're not playing. For example, when I was at Sacramento, me and the coach did not get along, and I was center back. So I started the season in preseason, starting all the games. I actually played against Colorado that year, and that's where they saw me for the first time, ended up buying me the next year. But the season started and I was the third choice center back for, I would say, half the season. But I didn't stop. I just kept training, And like Coach Alex said, I showed that coach that I was better than the guys he was playing. Any chance I got on the field, any scrimmage I was in, I was going to show him that I was better than the other center backs. About, I would say 3/4 of the way through the season. No, I'm about to say halfway through the season, one of the center backs gets hurt. I get my chance. I go in. I play well that game. Next game, I played again. I started and I scored. Next game after that, I scored again. Next game after that, I scored again. I'm a center back. I ended up the season. We won the Western Conference Championship. I ended up as being the second highest scorer in the team, and I got sold to the MLS the next season. So I think it's how you can take a negative situation, also spin it to a positive situation for yourself can be very, very big. You might be at a team right now where you're not playing, but you can always switch that situation. You have control over that situation to get better. You can't, and Coach Alex said he even made the mistake in college too, of how he was like, oh, maybe there's nothing to do. There's always something we can do. And I tell everybody that you guys can go and train. Training is free. You can go outside and practice, and we show you guys everything to do. I've got the coaching Instagram to post the drills for you. I tell your parents to videotape everything. You guys need to go out and practice. That's the biggest thing I could preach, because confidence in games comes from practice. And what do I always say to everybody? We don't practice till we get it right. We practice till we can't get it wrong. And that comes from training and training and training and training, because you might have to practice a skill a million times for it to come off that one time in a game. And nobody understands the hours and the years it took you to practice that, but they see the one goal that came out of it, and that's all they think about. But we all know what it takes to get to that point. And I think you guys, there's more we can also keep. But I think that's kind of all I got for right now. I mean, we can go into more, but I think what you want to do next, Alex? Questions from the parents?
Yeah, before I go into that, I feel like one big thing that Coach Mike said though when he was coming up and trying to make it professionally was like he faked it. And it kind of reminded me of like one article that I read about this big sports psychologist. Her name's Marissa Peer. She worked with like Premier League players. And one of her quotes was, "Belief without talent will get you further than talent without belief." So, maybe you might not be the best player technically, but if you believe that you have the confidence that you're going to go out there and play well, then you're going to be more eager to go and train because you're instilling in your mind, like, okay, like I'm good, like I want to go train, like I want to get better. So just having that mindset of wanting to get better, always wanting to improve will automatically set you up for success and to achieve your goals. So yeah, for the last like 10, 15 minutes, we'll open it up to some questions. Both me and Coach Mike will answer them. So if you guys want to write them in the chat, we can take a look at them and then answer them one by one.
He's in here. Can you go take a shower? Okay.
Alex, I don't see the chat.
Oh, you don't? Let me see.
Oh, no, I do. I see it. Yeah.
So I saw one question that was earlier on. Can we print this later on? So I actually recorded this, so we can send it out to anyone who wants the recording of it.
And if anybody has a question, like specifically for me or Coach Alex, you can ask that too. It doesn't just have to be on the topic of this. You can ask like personal ones about how when we were playing, what was going on with us.
Do you have any questions? No.
I might be good on that. I'll say one last thing because what you said, Coach Alex, about the confidence. I played professionally for 8 years, and there was a lot of guys that were not the best, but let's say the coach just believed in them. They performed at such a higher level than guys that were technically so much better than them, but maybe the coach didn't value as much. And I felt it myself at times in my career of a coach believing in you and you play so much better, and then like you just don't have the confidence and you don't have any less skill than anybody else, but the way you perform is so much less just mentally how you're dealing with the situations going on. There's a lot of times I was in depressions playing, and obviously if I'm depressed, I'm not going to play well. When your confidence is high and people believe in you, then you're always going to perform so much better. So I think, and obviously I don't think for the younger kids it's that big of a deal, but as you get older, it becomes a very, very important part of the game. I think there are a couple questions, Alex.
Yeah, we have some questions coming in. First one from Charlie. How do you balance schoolwork with training when you were young? So for myself, when I was younger, I didn't really have too many issues with that, but when I got to college, it was definitely something that I had to balance. And a lot of my teammates did struggle with that. Like a lot of them ended up leaving the team because they weren't doing well, like school-wise. They weren't maintaining like the GPA that they needed. The one thing I'll say about that is because that can be another stressor for you, like on the field. Like if you have a big project or you have a big test, like that's on your mind during a game. So the one thing I would say is always like use your time wisely. If you have free time, like say you have soccer practice at 7 and you have like a good amount of homework, I always like to get my homework done before practice so I can go into practice like not worrying about like, oh, I have to complete this worksheet after practice or I have to study for this test. Like I would make sure that I got all my work done before any practices or games.
I'll go take the next one. I see it says, how do you recommend dealing with an inexperienced or ineffective coach? I would say soccer is a game of opinions. If someone doesn't value you or they're not adding value to your game, you need to leave and go find someone else that will. Me and Coach Alex could have two completely different opinions on the same person. I could think this kid is the best player in the world, and Coach Alex could think they're the worst player in the world and they never want to play him. You got to find someone who values you and they're going to bring out the best version of you as a player. You want to take the next one, Alex?
Yeah, I'll take the next one. Injury prevention and still training hard. So I think Injuries are always a setback, whether it's minor or major. I had a pretty bad injury. I'm lucky to never have broken anything or never anything severe, but the end of my junior year of high school, which is like a major time for college recruiting, I sprained my ankle pretty bad. It was like a borderline break slash high sprain. So I was on crutches for a while. I was kind of out of the game for like 6 months. And obviously I couldn't train during that time. And it was a big period for me because I wanted to get recruited. And then when I was trying to come back, like go to like ID clinics or get noticed by coaches, like I would always need to get my ankle taped. And I remember I went to this Providence ID clinic and the coaches liked me and I was doing really well in the beginning. And then we were scrimmaging and I just couldn't play because my ankle like hurt really bad. I was like getting outrun and like it was really frustrating because like I was playing so well and then all of a sudden my ankle just gave out. So I think when it comes to injuries, I think obviously don't push yourselves. I'd say take the time that you need so that when you come back, you can train at 100%.
I'll take the next one. So the next one's, what should you do to make yourself feel better after a loss? I actually struggled with this as I got older and playing professionally. There was times where I just handled playing bad and losing really, really bad. There was points where I would lock myself in my room. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I felt like I needed to I don't know. It was not the right way to handle it. I would say how you need to feel better after losses. I would think about, okay, what did you do correct? So like, let's reinforce the good moments you had, right? And then also the mistakes you made, like what led up to those mistakes. I think that's why video is really important now. And it's the worst feeling in the world to watch mistakes of yourself on video. I had to do it all the time, but I think it's also the best because now you can learn the situation and what you could do differently. Like I would watch, let's say a ball went over my head and the forward ran in and scored, or I stepped to the wrong person. Now I can watch that video again. I can be like, okay, when I'm in the situation again, now I'm not going to step, I'm going to wait, or I'm going to drop off and that guy puts his head down and I'm going to be able to win that ball. I think you need to like take each game as it comes, but focus on your correct things and then constructively work on your mistakes.
Next one I see is can you do a future one on college recruiting and how you get recruited? So definitely like I was saying before, I want to maybe like every other week do a meeting like this where we have like a topic of discussion. So one of them can definitely be college recruiting. That's something that I went through. I know all the stress about that. It's definitely not an easy time. So I definitely want to do meetings. And then if you guys have any suggestions like that, please let us know. Like we're happy to do anything that you guys suggest. But
Yeah.
moving to the next question. One question that I saw that kind of resonated with me was how do you handle it when a teammate is verbally negative about a mistake that you made during a game? So I had a lot of those teammates where you make a mistake or maybe you don't pass it to them and they freak out at you. They start yelling at you, you know. And it's definitely frustrating because there's a difference between holding your teammates accountable versus kind of yelling at them and not kind of bringing their confidence down. So I feel like when a teammate is yelling at you like that and you're feeling like they're not holding you accountable, but rather like kind of verbally like being negative towards you, I would say just kind of take it as a grain of salt. Don't really focus on them. You know, internally, you know that maybe you messed up, but you got to move on from that. Like you don't need to focus on your teammates. They're playing their own game. I'm sure they made thousands of mistakes in the same game. So just realizing yourself that, okay, you made a mistake and I'm moving on. I don't need to hear it from like other people.
Yeah. I'll take the next one. It says, how can you motivate a child when they don't feel valued on the team? I've felt this before. I've had coaches that maybe just didn't value me as much as other people. And I think the thing for me is I used it as motivation for myself to show them that they were wrong. I mean, there's so many people that doubted me my entire career, but I think you can spin it to a positive, right? They don't feel valued, so show them why you're valued. And then also, like I said before, it's a game of opinion. So if that person doesn't value you, you got to go somewhere where you're going to be valued because you're going to always perform better where people value you. So I always want to be on a team. It might not be better than the other team, but I want to be on a team where the coach believes in me, and that's a coach that I would run through a goalpost for, do whatever he says, and he's going to get more out of me, and I'm going to be a better player because of it. It might not be as good of a team, but it's a team where I know I'm going to be able to perform and I'm going to have fun, because I know if I'm not valued on the team, it's not a fun situation. I don't want, I maybe just don't like going to practice at that point either, you know, but how can you get through it and show them that they're wrong? And then also on the next team you go on, prove that they were wrong about it. And maybe you can play that team again and beat them and show them that how much better you are than all those players, and make that coach eat his words.
Get the recording of this.
You wanna take the next one, Miles?
Yeah, next question here. Let me just take a look. Okay, so here, do you believe a kid should also do physical training as well as your training or mental training? So I feel like we don't really do, me and Coach Mike, during like the fall, winter, springish, we don't really focus on physical training, because especially when like you're young, I think it's really important that you learn the fundamentals like foot skills, passing, trapping. But in the summer, like when we do our camps, we kind of introduce, depending on the level that they're at. So the younger kids will introduce them to maybe lifting, depending on their age. And then we'll do like more physical fitness, like running. So I feel like it is going back to those three pillars that I talked about earlier, the mental, physical, technical. Physical training is definitely a very important part of the game. So I think going to that, back to that question, I think yes, but also cater to like what age the kid is and what level he's at, like physically wise.
Let me take the next one. It says, how does a parent deal diplomatically with coaches that don't expose the younger players to different positions? In my opinion, the 7v7, 9v9 kids should play in different positions. What is your opinion and advice on how to handle these situations? Yeah, no, I think like I said before about myself, I think you need to be just an overall good soccer player. I don't think that at 7 years old, you know you're going to be a forward the rest of your life, because that's just not true. I got recruited to play Division I soccer as like a forward or center attacking mid, and I ended up playing professionally for 8 years as a center back. So I think they do need to be able to play different positions, and maybe if the coach doesn't want to play them in different positions, maybe you just need to speak to them and ask if they can start getting a feel for other places on the field. But also, I can't imagine at 7 or 8 years old, 7v7, 9v9, coaches are going to be opposed to the kids playing different positions. Maybe if they are, you can get them into a different team too. Like maybe in addition, there might be another team that they can start to go play on, that they can start to get exposed to those different positions and different situations that are going to happen on the field.
Right. Next question here. It's tryout season. What advice do you have for where a player doesn't make the team that they want? How do you motivate them to keep going, improving? So one thing that I'll say, and I'm sure Coach Mike can attest to this, is no matter what athlete you are, you're going to face a lot of rejection. I know in my college recruiting process, like I thought this college was going to be it. Like I thought the coaches really liked me. I played honestly like one of the best games that I've ever had in my life. And I was talking to him after the game, and he started it really positively. He said, like, you're really good. Like, you're one of the best players that we've seen technically, like on the ball, like you know how to play. But then he was like, you're just like physically, you're not there. Like you can't, your physical like structure like can't really fit on our team. So like we're gonna have to like let you go, like not really go along with the process with you. So that was really like hard to hear, because it was late in the process of recruiting. I thought this college was going to be it for me. And then I kind of had to start all over from beginning by getting notice from other coaches. So I feel like how to move on from that is you need to realize that yourself, that you're a good player. And like Coach Mike was saying, you're going to have coaches that maybe they don't believe in you and they don't see your talent, but that doesn't mean you're not a good player. I know like countless of professional athletes, professional soccer players who like on one team, like they're on the bench, and then the next season they're on another team and they're the top scorer in the league. So a big part of it is the coach, and you need to realize that, okay, like it's not me that necessarily is doing something wrong. Like they just don't see my talent, and I'm going to take my talent somewhere else where I can go better to a better coach who's going to notice that.
Yeah, and I also think another like I would say thing for that is you didn't make the team. Like maybe that means you just need to train a little bit harder. I mean, I always use those negatives as to motivate myself. Like that was a no, and that no is going to motivate me to get that yes that's eventually going to come, because you're going to get millions of no's. You need to get used to that stuff. But how much can you keep going? Keep going, keep going. There's like a Rocky quote. It's like, how many times can you get punched in the face and keep getting back up? And literally that's just like life in general, but big time in soccer too. Like how many times can you keep getting like that no, that knocked down? Because I know how it feels to get rejected. Like it feels horrible and you're depressed, but how can you turn that around and use that as fire for yourself to keep training, get better, and to show that guy one day that you deserve to be there. Red Bulls released me. I was on Red Bull too. They released me, and Jesse Marsh didn't believe that I was going to ever make the first team. I ended up playing against them 2 years later, and came up to me and he was like, "Wow, like I'm proud of you that you're able to get here, because not many people get released from a team that's in the second division and that didn't get moved up to the first team, but then also be able to get there." I was the only person off Red Bull 2 that made it to the MLS off that team. So I think, with a different club, I think that you just need to use that motivation. Use that as motivation for yourself. How do you handle, you did that one as a sophomore, what are some good college ID camps? As a sophomore, what are some good college ID camps? I say stay away from college ID camps if you're a sophomore, unless you're actually talking to the coach. They're a money-making scheme for college coaches. Unless you're like actually talking to the coach and they want to see you. I have girls that juniors right now in high school, so they're 17. I would never let them go to an ID camp unless I email the coaches first with highlight tapes and the coach responds to me and is like interested in seeing them, because it's just like a regular tryout. When people go try out for New York Soccer Club, FC West, there's 300 kids there. How often are you going to really get seen in that, unless you're like Messi, right? It's not realistic. You need to, that's why I always try to send the kids when they go to tryouts to actual practices. You need to be seen because they want to see you, not just like get picked out of a bunch. It's so hard. You want to take the next one, Alex?
Yes, we got a couple more questions here. How can you not be as scared of the other players? So that's also a big thing before you go into a game. Like, say you know you're going against like the best player in the league, like the leading goal scorer. I think you can either go into that game with two mindsets. Number one, being fearful of that and kind of giving him too much respect. Like, okay, maybe he is the top goal scorer in the league, and say you're a center back. You can kind of be scared and let that control you, or you can go the opposite way and say, kind of cherish that moment and be like, oh, like I love this. Like I want to go against the best player in the league. Like it gives me that challenge, and like I'm going to show him that like even if he is the best player in the league, like he's not going to score on me. And that goes back to the confidence. Like before you step on the field, like you should have that mentality of like
Rob, could you keep him quiet?
and enjoying.
No, you come on.
like
I'm trying to listen to this now. For a half hour, him parking. Yeah. To me.
I'll take the next one. How often is training good for middle school athletes or students? Sorry. I think this isn't just for student athlete, middle school. I think this is for any age. You need to be training as much as possible. I would say as many touches you can get on the ball is going to benefit you, because you got to think there's only 11 spots on the field, right? And as we get older, the teams start to diminish and there's less and less spots for everybody else. So I need to be training more than everyone else. It's the quote on the back of the training shirts. It's one thing my dad said to me when I was younger that actually stuck with me. A lot of stuff he said went in one ear and out the other. This is the only thing that ever stuck with me. He said, every minute you're not training, someone else is. And that got me up off the couch. Every time I sat down and I was playing a video game and I thought about that, I was like, no, that person's not going to play over me. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to train harder than everybody else. So it's going to be that motivation from them. I don't think there's a bad number of training hours. The more you train, the better you're going to be. There's like I think there's a rule, it's like 10,000 hours to master something. You need to be training more than everybody else so that when that situation happens in a game, you're not going to make that mistake. You're going to be able to make that pass or finish that goal or dribble that person or defend that person. You know what I mean? Like the more you practice it, the easier it's going to be in the game when you get to that situation to actually execute what you've been practicing.
Yeah, so I think that was the last question. One thing I saw though was like articles or books about like mental training. Honestly, when I was in college and I had to do presentations on this, I did like a quick Google search and kind of looked at athletes that have gone through. Because if you just search like the mental side of game, like in athletes, a bunch of articles will come up. But just an example, I'll include it in the chat. This was one that I found on Marcus Rashford, who for a long spell like was playing really badly, like wasn't getting on the field, even though he's like an amazing player. But then after that, like he was in like really good form. He was scoring every game. And I don't know if you guys know a celebration of like where he points to like his head, and that kind of like reflects like how he was able to like overcome those challenges and get to like that red hot form that he was in. So I included that in the chat if you guys want to take a look at that. But then I'm also happy to send over any like books or articles that you guys would want to hear or read.
I see two more questions, Alex. I'll answer them real quick. There's one, is playing on two teams a good idea? I think the more teams you could play on, the better. You need to put yourself in as many situations as possible to be able to keep getting better at those situations. So if you could play on 4 teams, that's what you want to do. You want to play as much soccer as possible. It's how you're going to get better. And then I think the last one is, what do you think about kids being overwhelmed about doing too much or playing too much at such a young age? How can we help them through the stress and them feeling overwhelmed? This is a big thing, and I felt it big time when I was playing professionally. I was living in Sacramento at the time, and my family's in New York. My friends are all in New York, and I'm living in this state by myself, and soccer is the only thing I had. And soccer wasn't going well for me in the beginning. So my life was awful at that point, right? Like I was depressed. All soccer is all I had. Going to practice, coming home, watching TV, go to soccer practice, come home, watch TV. I had to go to a therapist, and he helped me a lot. He actually had me doing things outside of soccer that got my mind off of it. So when I'd come home, I would start to read. I would start to go for walks. I would go do things with some of my friends there. Like, you need to get your mind off the game sometimes when it becomes too overwhelming, because then you don't want to just start feeling that over. Soccer's a game. We need to enjoy it. You know what I mean? Coach Alex said that a lot. And the moment it starts becoming overwhelming, it's because you need to find an outlet for some of this stuff. So I think that's actually a really good question. And I think we could touch on that more too. I have like more to say about that. I don't want to keep people too much longer, but I think getting them to do maybe some other activities as well, so they don't feel so like soccer. For some kids, yes, that's what they need, but other kids, sometimes they need a little bit of a break from it. So maybe they can do some other activities to get their mind off it, and to maybe make them come back to soccer and feel like refreshed.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think that was all the questions. But like I said before, like I definitely want to continue this. Maybe like every other Sunday from 6 to 7, we'll have a meeting. It seems like a topic, because when I saw one comment in the question or in the chat was how parents can best support their athletes. So I'm thinking, and like not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that, we can do a meeting on the parents, and also if the kids want to be there as well, of how parents can best support their kids in soccer and ensure that they have like an enjoyment and a good experience.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for joining this. I mean, this is our first time, so we're trying to still figure it out, but I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, coaches.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Good night.
Take it easy. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Take it easy, Jaden.
Hey, Jaden.
What's up, Noah?
Bye.
Take it easy.
Oh, really tired.
You recorded that, right, Alex?
Yeah, stop
All
it.
right, cool. I could probably post it on like our YouTube channel so that people can have it, and maybe I can even get it. It's an hour though. I don't know if I can even post it. Can I post it on Instagram?